Hi, this is Brian Russell. Welcome back to class. I want to go over with you today the syntax of Psalm 121, verses 7 and 8. But first I want to give a couple of tips about the process of grammatical analysis as you move to learn and grow in this element. First, make sure that you're not mistaking simply parsing a verb or declining a noun for grammatical analysis. Parsing, saying the verb is a call imperfect is not grammatical analysis. All that is identifying the form. It's just the starting point. What grammatical analysis is, and you need to go back and look at the other examples, including this one, grammatical analysis involves interpreting the meaning of the grammar. So when you identify a verb as call imperfect, in that case, what's the meaning of the call? What's the meaning of the imperfect? And you're going to answer that question, or those types of questions, you're going to use the categories that are found in our class text by Arnold Choi. Again, one of the challenges, as I went over in class, is that to do grammatical analysis properly, you have to be aware that the Cook-Homestead grammar book that you used for OT 501 and the Arnold Choi book use some different terminology. There's a sheet uploaded in the resources section, and there's also an appendix in the Cook-Homestead book that gives the traditional names for Hebrew grammar. Again, Cook-Homestead uses modern linguistic terminology. For verbs, you're always going to analyze two different pieces. You're going to analyze the meaning, function, force of the binyan, the stem, so call, nifal, pe'el, pu'al, hithpael, hifil, hofel, and the verbal type, perfect, imperfect, past narrative, participle, infinitive, etc. So you need to say two different things about each verb. For nouns, you're going to essentially describe its function within the sentence. Again, it's important to go to your table of contents and take a look at how Arnold Choi is organized, so you can see where the different aspects that you're going to study are located. With nouns in particular, the hardest nouns probably to identify will be those that are in the genitive case. Remember, a genitive will be signaled by a noun in the bound or construct state. For prepositions, you're going to analyze the preposition with its objects. You're going to treat that as a whole. So its object will be a noun or a noun phrase. So in that case, the noun analysis is it's obviously the object of a preposition. So when you analyze the force of the preposition, you actually also analyze the force of the noun in that case. So those are some tips. Now let's have a look at Psalm 121 verses 7 to 8. Again, I'm going to use accordance for this, and so we'll pick up with verse 7. And notice this comes in really parallel lines here. So we have Adonai Yishmarka, Mikol Ra Yishmor Eth Nafsheka. So something like Yahweh or the Lord will keep you from every evil. He will keep your life. Or traditionally that word for life there, nefesh, can sometimes be translated soul, but it's probably better to see that as life, that a nefesh is the totality of what a person is. So let's go back and analyze. Okay, our first word's pretty straightforward. We have a proper noun, Yahweh, and how does this function in the phrase? Well, again, one of the ways that you can look at this is you can also look at the English translation. So I've opened up the ESV and the NIV, and as you can see, the Lord is the subject, and that's what it is in the Hebrew sentence also. But don't forget, you can use this technique essentially to annotate or critique English translations. So Yahweh, proper name, it's nominative, and it's the subject. All right, let's look at our verb. This is a third person imperfect call. It does have the second masculine plural suffix on it. The suffix here functions as an object. Shamar means keep, guard, preserve. So the question ends up being, what's the best translation? This is an imperfect, and so let's do two things. First, let's look at the call. Remember, call can either be fiative or stative, and so what's keep or guard? Shamar here in the call is going to be, this is a fiative, this is an action verb, and now the question that we have to answer is, what's the force of the imperfect? And if you go to 3.2.2 in Arnold Choi, 3.2.2, you can see the categories. And most likely, this is a future use of the imperfect. And if you just note, ESV and NIV both use will to report that. Now, if you're studying 121 as a whole, which we've done this week, if you just back up, I want you to notice something. Notice the change in terminology, right? Especially from verse 5. Verse 5 just makes some statements about the Lord. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade. Then it makes a promise. The sun will not strike you. The Lord will keep you. So these seem to be future-looking promises based on who God is. So this looks like, in this case, I don't think there's any real other options. So we will go with future. All right, then we get a prepositional phrase. We have the preposition men, which is, in this case, it's an attached preposition. So it's mem, hierik, and usually has a noon, but the noon is assimilated, and we see the doubling in that cough there. So this is like from every evil. So we have a noun phrase. We have call, which means all or every. And then we have evil. And so we have a genitive inside of this. But let's first analyze the preposition itself, the men. So if you go to the section on prepositions, which will take us back to section 4, 4.1.13, we have the uses of men. And in this case, it's probably our first one. It's source, and notice in the second paragraph it says, Arnold Choi writes, men can also place emphasis not just on the point of origin, but on movement away from something. So the Lord will keep us away from or from all evil. So this is a source, or more specifically, this would be what Arnold Choi are calling as a subcategory of source, ablative. Okay, what's the relationship between all and raw? So let's go to our genitive section, and all the nouns are in the front, or towards the front of Arnold Choi. So we want to look at 2.2. And what's the force of the word all? And if you look down through the categories, you will come to 2.2.11, where you have measure. This is probably a genitive of measure, in the sense that this is all of evil, from all evil. It's giving the extent of the evil. It's a quantifier, so it's emphatic. And so that would be this. So the prepositional phrase, this is a preposition of source, and then the relationship between these two words, all of evil, every evil, this would be a genitive of measure. So that's the first phrase. All right. Now, as you probably noticed in the poetry, since we have parallel phrases, and we'll look at this separately, but if you looked at these lines, the Lord will keep you from all evil, He will keep your life. That is classic synonymous parallelism. So we're also probably not surprised that we have, in this case, even the same verb. It's a call, imperfect, from shamar. It's going to be the identical to the use of the previous one. So it's still a call, it's fiative, and this is again another example of the future force of the imperfect. Now this time we have the direct object indicator, and we have the noun life, your life. This would be a possessive pronoun on here, but the actual phrase here, He will keep your life, would be an accusative. This is the direct object. So that's verse 7 already. All right, let's go ahead and move on to verse 8. Let me read the text for you first. We have Adonai, Yishmor Tzeteka, Uvoeka, Me'ata, V'ad Olam. Again, we have Yahweh here as the subject, and we have another repetition of Shamar, and it's a third person call imperfect. So again, fiative for the call, and this is probably another future form of the imperfect, so the Lord will keep. Then we get a couple of interesting phrases. These next two words, these would be a little bit difficult to parse. I think on both of these forms you can see the second masculine plural suffix at the end of both of these words. These two verbs are both infinitives according to the Cook-Homestead terminology. Arnold Choi would call these infinitive constructs. The first one is a call infinitive construct from yatsa. So this is a first yod verb. It would be yod, sade, aleph as the root. It has this extra tav in there, but this is from yatsa, which is a vocabulary word that you probably learned, though you may not recognize it in this form. It means to go out. And this is our call infinitive construct or infinitive from bo. This is a middle weak verb here. So what's the force of these of the calls? Now, going out and coming, these are both fiatives for the call, but now let's look at what kind of infinitive constructs are these. To find the infinitive construct, you're going to want to go to section 3 in Arnold Choi, and the infinitive construct comes in 3.4.1, and this is under infinitive construct. And in this case, what we have here is an example of a nominal use, because essentially these are verbal ideas, right? He will guard, then it's essentially you're coming out, or you're going out and you're coming in, or you're coming and going is another way you can translate that. And so the function of these phrases, these are essentially the accusative case, okay? And so this would be 3.4.1a nominal, where these are functioning essentially as nouns that have this verbal idea built into them. So in English, this would be like a gerund, essentially. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in, or the Lord will keep your coming and your going. So both of these would be examples of the nominal use of the infinitive construct. 3.4.1a3. All right. Then the last piece that we have two prepositional phrases. But what's interesting about this is the first is a preposition men again, but its object is actually an adverb that means now. So we have a temporal idea. So when you look at 4.1 and go back to the men, 4.1.13, this has to do with time, right? And you can kind of see that from now. And this would be the example of the temporal use. So this is the men of the temporal use of the men. This is B, 4.113b. And then we have a second preposition, which is odd. And you can just flip the page on Arnold Choi and go to 4.1.15. And again, until forevermore. What does that mean? That's another temporal use here. So we have two temporal particles. All right, that's the grammatical analysis of Psalm 121. If you have any questions, go ahead and raise them. But make sure that you include all the pieces that I did. And I look forward to receiving your excellent work. It's my privilege to be your professor. Have a wonderful day.